Chuck Schumer says that the Senate is going to hold a vote on what he's just calling the gay marriage bill. So let's journey back for a second. Why exactly is the Senate even addressing this bill? The reason that the Senate is addressing this bill is because when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote a concurring opinion. He signed on to the majority opinion, but he also wrote his own in which he attacked what's called substantive due process. Substantive due process is a jurisprudence or a legal philosophy that has no basis in our Constitution, no basis in our legal system, but it was on substantive due process that Roe v. Wade was based, which is why even personally pro-abortion legal experts generally said, well, Roe v. Wade, regardless of abortion, if you can remove abortion from the thing, which is hard to do politically, but if you could, it's actually just a poorly constructed ruling. It's not constitutional law. And as one legal scholar said, makes no pretense of even being constitutional. It was an invented right. And Justice Thomas said, listen, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade because of a wrongful reliance on substantive due process. So the court should also consider revisiting other landmark cases that relied on substantive due process as well, because any case that relied on substantive due process was wrongly decided. He, of course, named Obergefell. Obergefell was the Supreme Court ruling that codified gay marriage federally in our land. It was no longer up to individual states to decide whether marriage was between one man and one woman or whether same-sex couples were included in the legal definition of marriage. And this caused Democrats' heads to spin. Now, if we're being realistic here, this is not going to be something that the Supreme Court overturns. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, and only Clarence Thomas said that the court should revisit other cases that relied on substantive due process. Even the other very conservative justices did not agree with Clarence Thomas. In fact, they disagreed so strongly that not once, not twice, but 3 times in the majority opinion did the conservative justices say, this does not mean, this ruling has no implication on gay marriage. They wanted to make sure to separate themselves from Clarence Thomas. So 1 out of 9 justices taking this position does not mean that this is a realistic threat to gay marriage. But the left is using this opportunity. It's actually very politically savvy of them to use this opportunity to push something that's not just about gay marriage, that has larger implications, something that serves their larger agenda. So this is what Schumer said this morning. He said, a vote on marriage equality will happen on the Senate floor in the coming weeks. Now, the coming weeks are the lead up to the midterm elections. Schumer obviously wants to push Republicans into a corner. He wants to use the mainstream media to try to generate headlines that say Republicans hate gay people. Look at how they voted. And he thinks that that will convince especially young people in our country to vote Democrat in the midterm election. Whether or not that will work is actually up to Republicans. If Republicans let Democrats and the mainstream media frame this issue the way that Democrats and the mainstream media want to frame it, then yes, it will be damaging to Republican chances in the midterm elections. But Republicans obviously shouldn't let the Democrats and the mainstream media frame this issue because it's actually not about gay marriage. It's not about being homophobic or not being homophobic. It's not about tolerance. It's not about libertarianism. It's not about civil rights. It's not about freedom, except as it relates to the civil rights and the freedoms of religious people in our nation. So if Republicans respond well to this, then they have a chance to expose the radical left for what they're trying to do, expose the Democrats for trying to use gay people as a medium to push a Marxist agenda on the American people. The actual piece of legislation itself, this is how it reads, and I quote from the legislation. The bill repeals and replaces provisions that define, for purposes of federal law, marriage as between a man and a woman and spouse as a person of the opposite sex, with provisions that recognize any marriage that is valid under state law. It repeals and replaces provisions that do not require states to recognize same-sex marriages from other states with provisions that prohibit the denial of full faith and credit or any right or claim relating to out-of-state marriages on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, or national origin. Again, at first glance, okay, this is literally just codifying gay marriage into law at the federal level, which some Republicans are okay with. Some Republicans say it would be so confusing if you had a legal gay marriage in one state and that couple travels to another state that doesn't recognize gay marriage. They don't have the legal protections or the benefits of their marriage in that state. It's too confusing. It does need to be dealt with at the federal level. I would probably argue otherwise, but that's not the point of this conversation. And it's certainly not the point of this bill. The point of this bill is not only virtue signaling, it's pandering to demographics that the left wants to turn out in the midterm election, and it's trying to corner Republicans.